This slide contains the descriptions of the 6 principles of government. Popular sovereignty means that the people rule. And by the way, we have talked about all of these things a number of times. So popular sovereignty means the people rule. We do so using a republican form of government, which simply means electing representatives to speak for us. Limited government means that the federal government and also the state governments can only do what the Constitution gives it power to do. This is known as rule of law, as you know, and this means that we are not governed by the whims of man. Separation of powers means that each of the branches has its own set of duties to do. Congress makes the laws, president or the executive branch enforces the laws, and the judicial branch determines whether or not laws are constitutional. So they have their own jobs to do to make sure that there isn't too much power concentrated in just one branch of government. Checks and balances actually give each branch the power to check the power of another branch. So, for instance, Congress can pass a bill. The president gets to choose whether or not to sign it into law. And if he does, or he or she does, the courts could ultimately find it unconstitutional. So no one has complete control over the lawmaking process. There are some caveats and exceptions to this, but we'll discuss those later. Judicial review means the courts get to decide whether or not a law is constitutional. This was established in the court case called Marbury versus Madison, and originally the Supreme Court was a court of original jurisdiction, which meant that they heard cases when they were tried for the first time. Eventually, however, the majority of the court's cases became what we call appellate cases or cases on appeal. And it's someone who has a question about the legality or the constitutionality of a law, and they bring it to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court looks at the Constitution and gets to determine whether or not it is constitutional. Federalism should be a familiar term to you. It's part of that unitary confederate federal system. It means our state governments are separate from and equal to the national government in Washington, D.C. Now, this isn't entirely true. On paper, it is, but in reality, states are controlled to some extent by the federal government due to their reliance on federal funds.